Welcome to Designing for Humans in the Loop podcast, where we discuss the intersection of AI and design. Today, we have Freya Stockman joining us to discuss breaking down the walls between design, product, and engineering, and why adaptation and lifelong learning is what really matters as a designer. Freya is a product designer at Relevance AI, who's refining what cross-functional collaboration looks like in small, focused teams. She's created a wonderful playbook on vibe coding for designers and learning how to ship code. Starting small with automation experiments and agent building, she's evolved into someone who can step into a PM role, vibe code alongside engineers, while still maintaining design craft. Freya's approach is about building genuine front-end skills as a designer, using critical thinking to collaborate with large language models as a thinking partner, helping make her teams move faster through trust, mentorship, and building agents. So much to take from this conversation, so let's dive in. Welcome, Freya, to Designing for Humans in the Loop podcast. And today we're really happy to have you here. We've touched a couple of times in some masterclasses and a couple of weeks ago in our Gen AI lab get together for our 2-year anniversary. But I've been interested to really talk to you. One is that you've changed from a designer to really what I call a vibe coder, or really maybe a design engineer now. And we think this is really wonderful for the Designing for the Human in the Loop podcast audience. So we're really interested to talk to you around your personal journey. We'd love to get into all sorts of things around planning, how you think about vibe coding. And we'd love to talk to you a little bit about also how new ways of working, what does that mean? Working with engineers, maybe working with other designers. And there's probably plenty of more questions we have for you as well. But let's start off with how are you? And also, what was your journey to get to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to finally chat with you. I feel like we've been chatting and like trying to book this in for like months. But yeah, I'm really good at the moment. I think the end of year is always really interesting. Lots of projects like that you're trying to get done before the end of the year. But my journey to becoming a product designer, was it?
Your journey to becoming what I would say is from a traditional designer, maybe to sort of an AI-enabled vibe code designer, someone who's really taken a leap into just going all in on engineering and understanding what that means to adding that skill set into your, I suppose, toolkit as a designer. Not so much traditional Figma, but it's really dabbling into code.
Yeah, so I used to work at Eubank, which was a great experience. It was my first design job formal design job where I really got to cut my teeth and learn all of the foundational UX skills, research skills, UI craft. But earlier this year, I very much felt that if I didn't work somewhere that was AI positive, or encouraging their employees to use AI as much as possible, that I was missing out on the biggest adventure ever. So I managed to find a job at Relevance AI, which has just been the funnest adventure. And yeah, they're very much pro experimenting. So I did just that. I experimented with creating my own agents with their own knowledge bases to help me with different product strategy processes, to help me not be a mid-level designer, but think like a lead and try and drive a lot more decision making, because I have these AI agent resources to make my decision making sharper rather than just relying on my own natural abilities. So that's really helped me level up as a designer, number one. And then along the way, the engineering team, and specifically the engineering managers and founders at Relevance AI, they were like, hey, Cursor and Claude Code have gotten extremely good. Why are we not letting our designers play with this? Because it just feels like it would actually be pretty feasible for them to do this now that AI has come so far. So they essentially set us up with Cursor in an afternoon, and within an hour, I had already shipped my first pull request. And it was actually like a pretty significant pull request, but because I was so obsessive and hyper focused on like this new fun toy, I just got to work. I was like, yep, cool. Like, let's like put in a floating credit usage like pop up, so people know how much credits they've used across the different builder environments inside our platform. Yep, cool. Like let's link that to the pricing pop up so they can upgrade. Oh, yep, cool. Let's link that to their activity log. That is a very buried feature that no one seems to be able to find. Like I literally was able to create this like little mini flow from the builder experiences across the three different builders within like an hour and a half. I ended up skipping gym because I was so obsessed with getting this thing done. I was like, can't leave until I push this pull request. Um, so that was how I sort of got into vibe coding. It was a really fun, like effortless experience, really. And then that sort of it was, yeah, it was like that aha moment that designers talk about in like user flows and user journeys. Like, how do we get a customer to have that aha moment? And that was my aha moment, but for
Mm.
coding.
I have a question there just before because I think there's probably a lot more. As you were thinking about your career, because it sounded like you knew where you wanted to go, for probably more for our audience and designers who were thinking about trying to make that move as well, how did you set yourself up for the interview knowing that you probably didn't have those skills that AI relevance were looking for? How did you think about that, and what was the research you did? What were the moments where you go, right, what do I know about this? Or did you set yourself to be more vulnerable in saying, I don't know any of this, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to really develop myself to become what you wanted to become or where you are today?
Yeah, well, I definitely feel that there was a level of preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah,
I didn't I, as although I wasn't using AI at Ubank because there was a lot of strict security
yeah,
things in place that blocked us. In my personal life, I've had this online business that I've been nurturing for 6 years as like a
yeah,
hobby slash, yeah, tried to go solo on it. Then it became a hobby again. And it's just always been like a paid apprenticeship for me where
yeah,
I can, chuck subscriptions onto the business expenses for me to dabble with things or I've built automations before. I've worked with automation agencies to
yeah,
help build these complex systems for my own business, like marketing, SEO, blog
yeah,
creation, even um, podcast creation with AI voices. Like I've sort of experimented with automation. So I felt like I understood the space and I was personally really excited about it because of that personal lived experience of seeing how powerful it can be. Um, and I'd already started building my own Claude projects. My boyfriend was really into Claude and he showed me a few things with projects and knowledge bases. And so I just started like creating these on the side of Ubank to help me like prepare for the future, I guess. So I would say I didn't necessarily like fully understand the agent space, but I definitely had a lot of experience over 3+ years of building automations.
yeah. So you started small with small projects by the sound of it, didn't you, really? And I probably should have known that with your background, but I wasn't really sure how much of that background was played a part, but it plays an integral part into you feeling confident to go into such a place to go, yeah, this is where I want to be and forge your
Well,
career.
yeah, I mean, I have such a chaotic career arc. So like there's a lot of devils in the details. Like I feel like I'm a very complex person. But like yeah, I would say you can start small. You don't have to fully understand um, agents or AI, but like experimenting with it and prompting and creating your own little systems with Claude, for example, or Relevance AI as a platform, you can build a lot of um, really like simple use cases. You don't have to do something big, and that can kind of help to build your worldview on AI and how do you design for it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward back to the engineers and being in Cursor. One of the things we've spoken about previously is the idea of mentorship. How did that play a part in your journey to where you are today with engineers within AI relevance?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to have incredible mentors at Relevance AI who are very supportive of failing forward.
Hmm.
So I think they understood, particularly my engineering manager Inga and Dom and the founders, they understood that okay, this is quite a safe endeavor. Let's give them the tools and they'll have checks and balances in place like a normal engineer would have.
Yeah.
And let's just slowly mentor them. So they gave us a couple sessions to help us understand GitHub and like the lingo and why do I need to push a commit or why do I need to push a pull request? How does this sort of ecosystem work? Then yeah, like any questions that we've had as a design team, they've been very supportive of helping us to learn and evolve and giving us comments on our pull requests and explaining why this isn't proper or so I feel my understanding of coding and engineers and what they do has expanded dramatically from this real world experience that the founders were willing to give us because it's actually very safe. You can't really break anything because there's so many checks and balances that you'd have to go through all of that before you actually push it to the code base. So I think having good mentorship is one thing, but just having people who are like happy for you to have like safe exposure to the technology is like really important.
Hmm. And I think further afield, you're doing a lot of presentations in the last couple of months as well. I take it you've probably learned a lot through that as well. I'd imagine there's been a few comments who've come up to you and they've just been willing to be embracing what you've done. So I'd love to hear about what can you take from being out there and putting yourself out there as well to what you've learned and how that's sort of even given you more confidence, I'd imagine, to you're on the right track.
Yeah, yeah. I think a standout. Well, yeah. One thing that I've been really chuffed about is every talk I've done, people have come up and been like, "That was my favorite talk. Like that was really cool. Like thank you for showing us the practical side and not just the
Mm,
theory side." Because I
yeah,
think that helps to break down that this isn't just for the elite or like the super high IQ people. Like
yeah,
everyone can grapple with this stuff and learn with it.
yeah.
But then the another standout moment for me was when I presented at a conference at Web Directions. Um, the head of Eucalyptus and a design engineer at Eucalyptus, they presented um, on their concept of the blob and how within Eucalyptus, product managers, designers, and engineers are sort of like upskilling with AI to kind of become more fluid. And that's definitely been my experience. So that gave me a moment of validation that, okay, like other people are doing this, and this kind of feels like this is the future of collaboration. So, uh, yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was cool that they made the concept the blob, but my concept was the double diamond is melting. And so it was like kind of cool that we both came to this like creative concept about like melting or like molding. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think that sort of marries with a lot of the some things myself and Taryn have heard over here is starting small, but just willing to learn. The only way to learn is by doing. It's not about all of the knowledge you may have learned over many years as an expertise. Now, it's all the only way to really do this and understand this is really just get in there and dabble, play, learn, fail, and play around it. And I think I think you're sort of articulating that in the journey you're on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very much a doer. I'm very proactive, and I think that gives me a bit of an edge on other people who might be hesitating because
Mm,
like the there's not really much difference between me and the next person with this technology, but I definitely get my hands dirty and like step forward and just learn as I go, even if it's a bit stressful at times. Um,
mm.
because there's maybe expectations or deadlines, but you just make it happen and you use you're resourceful, you use what's at your like disposable or like available to you. So yeah, I think like just not hesitating and just like having a crack is like a massive asset.
What were what were some of your fears or the blockers of you had to face the moment of I'm not an engineer moment, but or I'm not a real coder moment. And what were some of the things to work through those?
Yeah, I mean, as as powerful as vibe coding is with Cursor, it's definitely I'm very humble using it because the whole time I'm doing it, I feel like I'm a baby waddling and just sort of trusting the technology, but also trying to be skeptical of it and realizing that the deeper I go into it, the less I know. And so I think it's like really important to um like don't like just be methodical and demonstrate critical thinking with what you're doing so that you can actually learn what's happening and make, I guess, like question, is this actually the right thing to be doing? Because Cursor will suggest um, lots of things and it's not actually the right approach. So I think having that ability to question, which designers are really good at, to get to the heart of a problem or the heart of a solution. That's sort of what I've been trying to leverage to push past that imposter syndrome of I can't do this. And I've been pretty impressed with what I've been able to achieve with that mindset. There's been moments where I've hit, you know, I've had to test technical dependencies, and I'm like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, but you kind of just take one step at a time, and
Yeah.
yeah, you get to the outcome.
You touched on this in your talk at Geno Lab as well. You spoke to it. Don't was it? If I don't know if I get this right. Hopefully I do, but you'll know exactly what I mean. Don't let the machine tell you what to do, but make sure. And I think you just touched on it. Use your critical thinking, or use the machine to augment your skills and your thinking. Is that right? Have I got that right in terms of what you were trying to articulate?
I really believe that humans, like we are actually the special the special tools here, like our ability to think dynamically and take in information and bring information from 3 months ago, like, and our emotional intelligence. So I don't think we should outsource all of our thinking to AI because I haven't really seen many examples where that really goes smoothly unless it's a full on automation that's been tested a million times.
Mm.
I think you should always use critical thinking, review, assess, question, document, get different LLMs to assess the work that is being proposed and really dive into planning so that you're always in control and you know what's going to happen, and then you take control of the situation rather than outsourcing everything, and then when something fails you just think, oh, it's too hard, because you don't actually know what it's actually done.
Mm.
So I think we can empower ourselves with AI by having it as like a co-pilot in our professional day to day, and that includes design processes and decision making, but also vibe coding and technical implementation.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe let's move to maybe a different topic now. I want to move over to maybe the craft of planning. So, um, you've gone through your journey. Let's talk a little bit about what that planning looks for you and you think about as vibe coding. We know we've heard from Gordon on previous episodes around the idea of the more you plan, the better off you're going to be.
I think like what I said in my talk was like 70-20-10. So the 70-20-10 rule is 70% planning, 20% execution, and 10% pairing or revision with an engineer. So that's in the context of you've got an existing code base that is mostly maintained by proper engineers, and you're plugging in as a designer. So you can afford to do 70% planning because you're working with a really strong code base, and then 20% execution. You can kind of take a plan, execute on it, and like work through problems. If you run into any challenges, pair or just check your thinking with an engineer, every day for like 10 minutes or just 10% of your time or even less. Just always check in with an engineer. If, though, you're trying to build a platform from scratch, because I had quite a few people come up to me after my talks and asking me these sorts of questions. if you're trying to actually build something from scratch and you don't have a strong code base, then I actually think the planning moves to 98%. And
98%.
or like 90% planning, 5% pairing, 5% execution.
Yeah.
I think if you're building something from scratch, you need to really be critical of your plan, go through lots of revisions, work out the back end, the front end, get an engineer to review it, and then you spend the least amount of time executing on it. Whereas I work with a very strong code base and engineers who are really talented. So it kind of eases up the amount of planning that I have to do, even though I still do a lot of planning.
Um, Thanks so much, Freya, for sharing that. And a lot of what you're actually explaining, it's just new concepts really to me. And wanted to understand beyond the hype, what does production level AI assisted work actually require?
Yeah, so to break it down, it involves. So how I'll start is I will ask Cursor, like, okay, this is the screen or experience that I want to edit. I will get Cursor to identify what files or code is associated with that experience. I'll get it to document all of the different components that make up that screen. Just sort of like our design system, right? Like, what are the different elements that make up components and how are these things built? Um, I'll get it to document API endpoints and any data that we're tracking in PostHog, like analytical data, like, oh, this person clicked this button and this relates to our activation metric. Um, I'll also get Cursor to document what are the critical aspects of this screen that if we were to remove it or change it, it would break something important in another flow or another experience. So once I've done that, I will give it my plan of how I want to change the experience or what new feature or I want to build on top. And I'll get Cursor based on how things are currently built to assess my plan. So I'll give it images of my Figma screens, I'll explain the context, I'll give it the problem statement and like my ticket if I have like a detailed product plan. And yeah, so those are kind of like the initial steps that I take. The next steps would be, okay, is there any backend or technical dependencies that I need to make sure work in order for this experience to work? So I will document tests or like the types of tests that I might need to run before I even start coding and building out my new experience. So those are kind of like the high level of like, what does this actually look like?
And that's really detailed, and obviously a lot of thinking goes into it. And did you just happen to just come up with this in collaboration with your team and the engineers who you work with, or is this like an industry standard?
This is Inga Standard, my engineering manager, who is she's amazing. She's like really well known in the engineering world. She taught me and Caitlin. We were working in a mini vibe coding squad to try and boost activation and retention in our chat app that we just launched. And so this was kind of her baby, her dream to see if she could enable non-engineers and particularly women to vibe code at a very high quality. So everything that I'm telling you is honestly regurgitated from what I've learned from Inga, but I definitely took really good notes and implemented everything she taught me. And yeah, I think I've been a pretty good student. But yeah, it's all her, and I'm very grateful for her mentorship.
Yeah. And it's absolutely brilliant. Like, and I think you're incredibly lucky to have access to Inga's guidance, because obviously Justin and I mean, we are learning from you in this conversation as well. So yeah. Um, I wanted to understand as well. You touched upon that designs system thinking that you apply at the start, which is at a very, it's obviously applied very differently with vibe coding. But just curious, in what ways do you think design skills like systems thinking gives designers an edge in this kind of work?
Yeah, I think so. Designers have some pretty awesome uh, skills, and that gives them an upper hand, I think, in this new AI era that we're moving into. The the first is that we know how to describe components like at their smallest form, from like drop downs or toggles or padding. Like we understand all of, and so you can describe that as needed to AI and it will pick that up and be able to implement it. So I think we're very good at understanding big concepts, then uh, explaining those in ways that make sense. Like I think designers are very good at distilling big concepts and making them understandable for other people. So if you think of AI as just another human that you're working with, your ability to describe or give context to them about the user journey or the components that you want to build is your edge. um, and the fact that you have so much context about the user problem that also can be fed in. So yeah, I actually think that our all of those natural abilities, or the abilities that we are trained for, they apply very well when working in collaboration with AI.
Um, and if someone was starting tomorrow, what practical advice would you give them to get moving in the right direction?
uh get a copy of my cursor playbook. And
It's a really good plug. We'll add the link in the resources on the podcast as well. Yeah.
yeah, I would also say start thinking about your entire design workflow as individual tasks. What sort of information would you give an AI agent about generating jobs to be done, or um, generating customer insights and creating slide decks? I don't know, like little parts of your workflow that you do on a day-to-day basis in your company. How can you create systems or like agentic systems that can support or make those faster, and apply that automation or agentic lens to the work that you're doing, but break them into very individual tasks? So I have individual agents for UX narrative or UX copywriting. I use that like all the time. Plus like other agents, and then with vibe coding, a similar thing. Instead of thinking of this giant project and then trying to like do a one shot at it, break it into its parts, really understand the individual bits, and challenge the approach until you refine it into something that you understand, that an engineer can make sense of, and then it just really boosts your ability to succeed in this space.
You mentioned agents, like just curious and maybe a bit envious. How many agents do you have that you work with? Your personal
I think
agents,
I've
design agents?
Okay, so the ones that I use like very regularly, like my go-to, there's probably like 5 to 10 that I like use as a co-pilot regularly. But I've created probably like 30 agents that I use as needed. I think working in a startup, you know, you you kind of like might not be able to do as much discovery work as you'd like to, or you kind of like just focus on like output and UI. But when I do have the opportunity to like dig into discovery, that's where a lot of my agents shine, because they're very discovery focused and like those individual processes. Whereas when it comes to Figma and vibe coding, um, I kind of just have like workflows that I'm still doing the work. So it's a bit less on the agent side, but definitely UX copywriting, user flow planning, um, and making sure I'm asking the right questions to understand the problem. That one's really helpful as well.
This all validates as well. Like, as Taryn and I have listened to Gordon and even Riley around, just we spoke last episode on what does it mean to be AI literate in organisations, and she sort of exactly what you've just explained. For what is your role? How do you break it down? And then how do you kind of put it back together with whether it's agents or user journeys or flows using obviously large language models, agents, and so forth. So it was really, you're exactly right. So what does a designer do? And sometimes it takes we need to step back and look at that. What do? We do lots of things. Where does those agents fit into that, and where do we take over as humans to make more informed decisions?
Yeah, exactly. Like you essentially have to look at yourself and the work that you do and break it into its smallest parts. And those are your use cases for creating agents. And you can create agents on Relevance AI, for example, or yeah, like our competitors like Claude Code, or you can create these agents to be simple. Like they just draw on a knowledge base, so they become powerful collaborators that when you provide them new context, they have the knowledge of how to do the job based on the materials you've given them. Or they can be powerful resources just by that alone. They don't have to be very complex, integrated agent systems. You could just start off with trying to make individual processes in your workflow faster.
Probably a good tip, isn't it? Don't try and think big that you're going to try and solve the world. Just start small.
Yeah, just start small.
Freya, let's move to new ways of working. So one of the things we discussed with you a week or so ago was how your role's even changing, not as just as a designer, but you're actually stepping into a multitude of roles. But you're also seeing it the other way as well. For engineers, for example, stepping into bringing, I suppose, maybe problems, but you're using those problems to uncover. They're using Figma to bring more tangible things to you as a designer to then sort of maybe problem solve better. But you said you're even stepping into doing engineering tasks. Are you doing product tasks? You're doing a multitude. What does that look like for you in your day, or you and your team on a daily basis? And what does it mean maybe for the future of what a product team really looks like?
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I can speak to stuff that's happened literally this week.
Okay,
um,
sure. Good examples.
yeah, or like last week. So, yeah. So, for example, I'm working on this project, creating like meeting intelligence for enterprise customers,
Yep.
and I'm working in a triad with one engineer and one PM, and we're a very nimble triad at the moment. So I'm definitely focusing mainly on design and fleshing out those scenarios in prototypes. And Charlie's working on the technical aspects, scoping things out, building early proof of concepts for each of the different parts of the flow. And then Josh is still definitely doing the PM work, stakeholder management, road mapping, and planning. But something that has been really cool for me is Josh is away right now. He comes back tomorrow, actually, but he's been away for 2 weeks in the UK visiting family. And Inga tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "Hey, so is there like a plan or like a Gantt chart with checkpoints of like when we know we are not on track to deliver this thing by the deadline?" And I was like, that's a good point. I don't think we have that. And Josh is away for 2 weeks, and then we have the Christmas shutdown period for 2 weeks, and then we only have like a 4 week runway. So yeah, it probably would make sense for us to like have this backup plan in place of when we know that we're not on track and when do we need more engineering support. And getting the founders on board with this plan so that's not a shock for them if we turn around in January and we say, hey, we need more help to get this thing over the line. So I used I used AI to help me create a Gantt chart based on all of the individual scenarios or technical builds that we would have to create from scratch to make this new flow fit together in our platform. And yeah, I mapped that out. I talked to Charlie. I was like, hey, do these estimations make sense? We mapped it out. We also put in that we'll definitely need engineering support for a video file storage feature in our chat app. But that's not a high priority for this project. But if we can get engineering support, we could try and squeeze that in so that we're delivering a more comprehensive feature rollout to our enterprise customers come February. So that's sort of an example where I could just use AI to quickly make this Gantt chart, then go into a conversation with the founders and technical leads to work out our game plan. And it just really helped with conversations and making sure that we have a plan in place and we're not just flying by the seat of our pants as me, the designer, and my engineer, Charlie. So, yeah, that's an example of stepping into PM work. But then on the vibe coding side, in order for us to get this over the line and so that Charlie can focus on the bigger fish to fry, I'm going to do a bit of vibe coding on parts of the flow that doesn't require heavy back end for me to map out. And then once Charlie has built the back end, I'll then connect that to my experience that I create with vibe coding. So, because this feature's massive, like there's so many different scenarios. So my ability to step in and help with vibe coding, but high quality vibe coding, not just like random, like changing buttons and positioning of things, like actually building out parts of the flow. Like it really helps to help Charlie focus on the bigger top priorities.
You've got a design system there that you're probably leveraging as well in terms of vibe coding, I'd imagine, to bring a little bit of, I suppose, taste or UI that feels and looks like that's what you're trying to move towards, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think from the conversations that have happened with the engineering team is we do have, I guess, like a code-based design system, but it's not fully fleshed out. So, but it definitely helps. Like me working with an established code base makes my life easier because I'm working with like good foundations. So it's easy for me to build on top or like modify accordingly because I'm not starting from scratch.
I'd imagine, and also what you've explained there is that you're not just working in, you're not going step by step as well. You're not going, oh, we'll go and do research, we'll then go and do some prototyping, and then we'll look at some visuals, and then we'll hand it over to engineers. You're kind of jumping ahead, and then maybe you'll come back. Talk to me a little bit about that relationship, because does that mean you've got to have a really good relationship with your engineer to go, I'm happy to dive in there, and we've got a real good understanding of structure of where things need to plug in, and yeah, it feels like it feels a bit chaotic, I suppose. Imagine to listening to people or people listening going, how do you do that? How do you know where you are, and where do you dive into the weeds? Where do you sit back? Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, or what the relationship is, because it does feel chaotic, but I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, I guess like it's just very startup-y, I guess, because yeah, like my previous experience working with engineers is it's very process driven. The PM gives you the ticket and then you create the experience and then you hand it to an engineer to scope out and then the engineer builds it, and there's like a lot of process. Whereas, yeah, working at a startup, me and Charlie have a great relationship. He's a brilliant engineer, so I sit next to him. We're like very much a mini little team. And so I'll ask Charlie, hey, like whereabouts in this experience do you think I could start vibe coding that doesn't depend on all of the back end work you have to build out? And he'll go, oh, yeah, this you could build, and then we could just stitch it afterwards because it's just about pulling data from the new data source. So it's just very collaborative. I think my work as a designer is just now very fluid. I definitely am still owning design, but my ability to be a bit more fluid and negotiate what do we need to succeed for this project and the timeline. That's my approach, is just like, okay, how can I fill in the gaps? And I just have an open conversation with the people I'm working with. And right now, the people I'm working with is just one engineer and one PM. So it is very like intimate and like
Mm.
very close collaboration.
Yeah, sounds like a really good collaboration and a good relationship with an engineer, similar to, I suppose, what traditionally would have been a more of a relationship with a product person as opposed to an engineer. But I constantly hear these stories, not stories, but I constantly hear this as engineers and designers need to work a lot closer together these days. And it's so important for designers to understand where you are in terms of your career, in terms of vibe coding, but understanding what's going on in the back end. And of course, other guests, Gordon, again, talking about that, he goes, you've got to understand everything. You can't just understand the UI front and what that does there. You've got to understand, well, what's that doing? How's it communicating with the back end? And I think it seems like a good tip from you would be build a good relationship with an engineer and really, it can really sort of elevate your work, but it can also elevate how your processes can sort of be much more standardized, but also be able to break away from them if need be in that case, I'd imagine.
I think working closely with one or two engineers that you feel really comfortable with, who are happy to support you, or they're very collaborative, goes a long way for you as a designer to upskill, and with AI. So I sat next to Nathan for a few months, and that was at the peak of me exploring vibe coding. And I would just ask him questions, and I was very appreciative of the time that he was giving me, and so I tried to make it a pleasant experience and not really like annoying or me like adding lots of work to it, his table.
Mm,
And the same with Charlie. Like me and Charlie just have a really good rapport. We really get on.
mm,
I really trust him to do his thing, and we spar very well together. So I think I've just been very lucky to work with really great people.
mm.
That makes collaboration joyful.
Yeah, sounds like you've got a really great vibe coding vibe, but general good working relationship, and it seems like you're all learning together. I take it also there's a little bit of design thinking and systems thinking, whatever we want to call it, with our toolkit that you can also spread to the engineers, I'd imagine in this case.
Um, yeah, I think like I definitely involve engineers early on and throughout my design process. I'll show them concepts and I'll get their input. So they're very much my design partner. I don't see them as like the last step in a process.
Mm,
Um, I think I love the traditional triad, the mini squad sort of setup where you've just got like one PM, one designer, one engineer. Like I think that's a really great um, intimate collaboration that where you can build trust and rapport and this like sort of us against the world vibe. And that goes a long way for working fast, being more fluid in collaboration, helping each other.
Freya, it's been a wonderful chat today, but one last question is, what is a title to be given to a designer these days? You've got a number of different titles at the moment, like AI-enabled product designer, AI design systems specialist, vibe coder. What is another title that we need to add to our library of ever-ending titles that designers seem to give themselves?
I know. I feel like there's so many different permutations, and
Mm,
there was already like I'm a UX designer, I'm a UX UI, I'm a
mm,
product designer, I'm a like so yeah, I think for me personally, like I'm trying to I actually yeah, I think it's important to communicate that you're a product designer and plus this other thing. I do think you have to, in this era that we're moving into, there are people who are still just doing classic product design. So I think there has to be some way to communicate that, hey, I can also do this competently, or like I'm like a junior engineer at this point, right?
mm,
I've actually been told that when by the engineers that I've worked with, and they see my workflows and the things that I've been able to do, they're like, dude, you're kind of a junior engineer, like, or to a mid, because you're able to, but mostly
mm.
junior vibes. So I would say maybe like AI front end builder. Like, I don't think we should use the word engineer, because like engineer is like, oh, so you know how to code? Like, I think we should
Yeah.
like save engineering for people who actually know how to traditionally code and understand
Yeah.
the technical stuff. So I definitely don't pretend to know like traditional coding. But what I can do is I can build front end, and
Mm.
I use it with AI. So I would say maybe like product designer slash AI front end builder, because you
Yeah.
build, but you're mainly focusing on front end with a little bit of technical stuff in the background, and you're using AI. So I think that's like
Mm.
a accurate reflection of
Yeah.
what I'm now able to do when needed.
Yeah. It's hard to fulfill that in a couple of words, isn't it? It's really just, this is sort of what I do, but let me talk a little bit about some of the toolkits I utilize to bring together what I actually output, or the outcomes and purpose of my role. Um,
Yeah.
and just to finish off, you have a great playbook for vibe coding. Where can people get that, or could we probably put that in our show notes? But and what can people, or what can designers learn from that, given the work you've put into that playbook?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think if you don't know much about this new world or like much about what I've been talking about, a great place to start is to read my Cursor playbook, because it's pretty much a documentation of my learnings over the last few months. And uh, there's even some notes on how to get enabled through your team, how to approach it with your team. It's a Notion document. I can share a QR code or a link with you guys. Is that probably the best way to share it?
Yeah, that will probably work. We'll put it into the show notes, and designers want to join in, then please, they'll be able to go from there and connect with you, and learn a little bit more around your process using Cursor. And I think they can probably reach out. I think you have a newsletter, and you also do a little bit of mentoring as well, don't you, in this space?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And I'm also putting together a bit of like a course, like a toolkit, um, to help people start thinking about these things. I think the Cursor playbook has been a starting point for me, but
Mm,
yeah, I want to break it down. So the best thing would be to add me on LinkedIn, join my newsletter, and I can keep you in the loop with these things, these artifacts, or like educational resources that I come up with.
fantastic. Yeah, you're doing a lot. You're a real tinkerer, aren't you? You love to get in there and learn new things and then be able to share them. So it's fantastic. And I'm sure our audience, because myself and Taryn really started this podcast for a couple of reasons. We just sort of heard the word, oh, designers are going to lose their job because of a button. But I think the guests we've had, and even you today, that is so not the case. There's so much for a designer to be able to offer, working in a trio, as you said, as a product or engineer. Um, More skills to learn, that's fantastic, but there's so much opportunity for a designer in this day and age to what we can create and invent next.
Yeah, I really believe, I mean, I've spoken to so many people who have the opposite opinion, but for me
Mm,
personally, the type of work or complex features that are out there that you have to create as a designer, I think there's just so much nuance and process and problem solving. Like there's so many layers to that designers I don't think will be replaced, but you will be. I do believe in the sentiment that you will likely lose a job to someone who is more AI or more efficient or
mm,
able to push the boundaries of what they're doing as a collaborator in a
yeah,
team. You may lose opportunities to those sorts of people. So I think the best thing you can do is to experiment with it and not um, just categorize it as I'm going to lose my job or something. Like I think that we have to be nimble and adapt to this new way of working. But
mm,
I've definitely, from the work that I'm doing at Relevance, it's very complex. I don't think I could outsource the whole thing to AI even if I tried. So,
yeah,
like, I think we'll always be needed.
yeah. Well summarized, I think. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the word adapt. I think as designers, we're very good at adapting to different problems, different situations, and we've probably seen that over the course of decades now, to being a traditional graphic designer, a web designer, a digital designer, a UX designer. So adapt is a really good word. And it's just, I think that's what we're doing. We're just evolving into that next whatever that would be. So, but
Yeah.
Freya, thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful to speak to you, your processes and your journeys you've been on, and thanks for sharing. We'll have all of those playbook links in the show notes. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's been lots of fun.